This is the What Do You Know show hosted by Rio and my co-host Griff.
Yo, what's up?
How's it going, Griff?
You know, bouncing back.
What do you got to complain about this week?
I'm good.
Okay. Anyway, we got two special guests in the house tonight. Lauren.
There you
go. And Ola. And just so you guys know, I've messed it up the first time.
He called me my roommate's name, but it's fine.
Yeah. That's because I'm a human being.
I support it.
Does that never happen?
Everybody makes mistakes.
You know, actually, I think that's the first time that's ever happened where somebody called me Rachel instead of Lauren.
That works. That means I'm original.
You're right. First time for everything.
First time for everything. Mm-hmm. Also, before we kind of get more into y'all background, I just want to say we got the You Know and Co hoodie on the table. Larges, extra larges, and smalls are left. Go ahead and pick that up on the website in the description box below. That's my little plug.
You know, I think this might be the first show that I'm not wearing a You Know and
Co. That's why I waited to actually bring it out, because I'm like, is Griff wearing it today? Because now y'all have seen it on Griff. Griff loves the support. Also, You Know on anyway. So we were getting into, before we realized we had a mic problem, y'all backgrounds working in IT and security, correct? And I don't know anything about technology, so I was trying to get a little bit of background. And where I really wanted to go with that discussion is there's not many opportunities for minorities in STEM, or at least that's talked about often. And I wanted to know if you guys could dispel that myth, or is that something that you guys actively face in your work life, like now?
So I definitely don't think it's a myth. I think it's definitely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things at Lilly, though, is we try to do a good job of offsetting that, because in a lot of other areas, especially in tech, it's not really, or STEM just in general, there is underrepresentation. So I think we have a really good, just from a Black community, I think we have a really strong Black community at Lilly. And I know the people before us have taken a lot of time to make sure that that is strong, so that when we came in, we felt like that was the case. But it definitely is a thing.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
I think, like, at least in my experience, like, I'm often the only Black person in the room, or I'm only the only woman in the room. And I know that before I came here, like, I'm basically a product of their effort to fix that. And I know, like, I'm also a part of efforts moving forward to fix that. So I know they're actively working to fix it. I think they see the value in, like, diversity and stuff, but it's, you know, it's going to be a journey. So yeah.
I think you bringing up you being the only one in the room, sometimes I forget that I'm the only, because I'm so used to being the only, not only the only African American in the room, but also the only female in the room.
Interesting.
And I've gone to PWIs my whole life, predominantly white institutions my whole life. So I'm so used to it that sometimes it kind of, I don't realize it until after I've left, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny for me. I have an inversion of that. The first time I was ever saw so many white people at one time is when I went to IU, and that was that was really weird for me, adjusting to, because it's a different cultural setting, and it's so funny too. Like you were saying, I was so used to being the only white kid in the classroom, and when things got awkward, I'm like, I'm the only one here. And the reason why I think it's interesting for me is maybe because white people are the majority in America, but that's not what I saw growing up. I didn't feel uncomfortable in a room full of white people just because they were my skin color. And so when you're in a room full of Black people, do you feel at home, or do you feel this is just people?
I mean, I've definitely gotten you're too Black for the white people and you're too white for the Black people. I've gotten that.
That's so weird.
Many times, just because from the way that I have speak to the way that I carry myself, or the music that I listen to. I have a wide variety of music that I listen to. So I'll go and listen to I don't know, literally like rock or something and be fine. Or but I feel in Black communities sometimes it's a little weird to be listening to Leonard Skinner at random times.
I hear you.
No, I feel that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in my own home, sometimes, I'll be playing, if, God forbid, I play Hans Zimmer on the loudspeaker.
I love Hans Zimmer.
Who doesn't?
Who are you? And what is this? What is this music you're playing? With all kinds of attitudes.
Yeah.
So I definitely
all kinds of attitude.
With that.
I think so. I'm not from here. I think I'm the only one not from Indy. So I feel at home, because even though I was getting that same kind of dissonance or disparity, I was still surrounded at a young age with a bunch of black people. And so like I missed that when I went to my PWI. So like in high school and college, and then coming here to Indy, I'm like, dag, like I'm really the only one. So like when I get in the room, I'm like, oh yeah, cool, like we're at home. And it's a little different for me because I feel like Indy is not as like, I guess, standoffish as like the DMV is. So like even like I don't get that, oh, you're too like white for the black folk, you're too black, or you're too
black.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. So
Yeah.
like I feel like I don't get that. I feel better here about that than I do like being at home and stuff like that. So I do feel more at home, or like more like I belong here, like in Indy. So.
Like I felt like a lot of times, more often than not, I feel at home. But there are times where, especially when I'm playing music, it really is like it really is 100% when I'm playing music. I'm like, oh my god.
But I think that's like, I think music. So I think we all like love music like a lot. I love music a lot, and it's one of those layers. Like when you first look at somebody, you have no idea like what they listen to. But like I love EDM, I love band music, I love rap. You know, I love alternative rock. I love everything, and nobody would know that until like
knowing
like just
you
before
and knowing
I
how
pull
much
up a
you love
song.
EDM has still thrown me for.
Yeah, like it's just like people would never think it or anything like that, but it's just like it's just a part of the layers that we have that I think it's important to get to know each other, because like, or get to know people, because like you just never know like where you can relate, or like where your differences are, like where you can learn from each other. So
that is so interesting that you say that, because I studied fashion in college, and I'm running one of my own brands with a partner. And the reason why I find that discipline really interesting is because we usually assume so many different stereotypes about someone just based on how they look, despite the fact we've never talked to them and stuff like that. And so I never thought that way about music, though. You know, like, oh, I wonder what this person listens to. And do you think that, because they say that art often imitates like real life, and so, and I know a lot of my friends are musicians, they often talk about their stories in their music. Do you think that it's a way that we can build community like through music? Because that getting exposure to other people's lived experiences and things of that nature, if you like take a moment, like you were saying, maybe you listen to Leonard Skinner, that may transport you to a different time, because they're what, in the 70s or 80s or something like that? Yeah, in the South and stuff. And that's like a completely different time, experience, and a whole different like culture or whatever. But we can... Do you think that we can build the bridges in culture through music?
Absolutely. So just think about like the big, like, I guess 70s like thing, or like even back in the 50s. A lot of the music went worldwide, all these like peace movements and stuff like that. And then like if you just kind of study music and think of like if you think about rock, but then little subgenres like spun off in like different countries and stuff like that. But if you all go to some festival, you're going to see a lot of different people. So I think like it's a good way to build locally. So like the first thing I did when I got here was y'all know, like I was looking for open mics and stuff like that. And it was all different types of people there. And then you think about these massive movements over time with music, you're building like a worldwide community. So I think it's like, yeah, it's definitely possible.
Some of my favorite artists have always been crossover artists, like artists that cross over from different genres or different races or cultures or whatever. Those have always been my favorite, because it's like they're speaking their truth and it resonates with everyone. And so I think that's what's always been so interesting to me, like Prince, Michael Jackson, like those, like Motown basically.
Yeah.
Those artists have always been super interesting to me, just because they're always talking about something or singing about something that you could play it at any bar, at any club, anywhere, and everyone's going to know what that music is. Everyone's going to know what that song is. So bridging that gap with music, I think that's something that we always talk about, and we see it, but it's not like, I don't know that it's ever a thing that people actively decide, like, I'm going to bridge the gap with music. It just kind of happens, I guess.
You know what that's really bringing to mind is this controversial quote from Lil Wayne. I don't know if y'all heard it, but he was asked about the idea of racism in contemporary American society, and he said that he doesn't see it because a lot of his crowd is white people.
I
I'm not asking you to agree or disagree with that.
Right.
I'm just saying that was something very controversial and interesting that he had said. That I was like,
so I kind of have like, okay, so not a counter to it, but an artist that I really love, No Name. She brings a lot of attention to it. So like, she's like a spoken word
exploitation type.
Yeah, so
I'm aware of what her stance is on things.
Yeah, and so she at her concerts, she'll be like, hey, white people, all of my songs are about like not liking you guys, but also y'all have like the most responsibility of the people in this room. Like, I'm a storyteller, so like make sure y'all understand the story, don't just vibe to the music.
Right.
And, she directs it at white people in the crowd, but she also directs it to everybody. Like, I'm telling my story, I know y'all can relate to it, and if y'all can't, like, really listen to what I'm saying and try to like share that story. And so it's like, that's interesting that Lil Wayne doesn't see it, but in the same way that like he's kind of bringing people together under, I guess, his music and like saying, you can forget about it. I think you can also bring attention to issues and like it's like activism through music.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Which, do you look at that as building a bridge, or? I think it can be. Or one with a toll booth that raises up.
So I think it can be.
Hold up.
Yeah. So I think that's just like when you're having like one-on-one conversation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like you got to be a little more tactical about how you're delivering your message and stuff like that. She's a little more privileged because she's an artist and making money and people love her music, so she can just be like, screw y'all, da da da, love y'all, and it's easier, I think, for artists to do that because they're already at an elevated level. They know that kind of the whatever feedback they receive is just from a fan. So it's a little different from one-on-one, where any feedback I receive, I'm going to take it personally because we know each other on a personal level. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
So I think it definitely can be. So it can be a touchy way, but just artists and fans.
You be so quiet, and I got to bring you in on it.
You don't always have to just call attention to the fact that I'm listening.
Cause
I'm listening. So I think it's an interesting discussion. To the whole point of Lil Wayne, like, I mean, even your analogy of like a bridge versus like a toll.
Yeah.
I guess I always call out like, what is the intention? And so when I think about like the Lil Wayne example, like Lil Wayne doesn't see racism in his crowd because he's got white people there. And maybe for Lil Wayne, that's okay because maybe he doesn't want to think about racism. And because of that, he doesn't want his crowd, his fans to see that. And so he says, yeah, I don't see it. And he's not going to make an effort to draw attention to it because when he's sharing his music, his intention is maybe to forget or maybe to just kind of like wash over the fact that racism does exist and it might exist in his crowd, but it doesn't exist when he is playing his music and he's bringing people together. Whereas with No Name, like her intention is to share her story and to have that mean something to everybody who hears it. And so, you have to draw attention to the fact that, hey, I've experienced racism in my life and I'm going to share that through my music. And I'm glad that y'all vibe with it, but also pay attention because it'll probably happen to somebody else that looks like me or somebody looks like you on the other side of the story. And so like really not just addressing it for the show, for the concert, for when you listen to the song, but, to draw attention to it outside of that, which is, I think that's in some ways is way more important, right? Because you can make music that stops making you feel that right then and there, but when the music is gone, it still exists. So,
like as you were saying that, maybe he didn't want to like separate his crowd or like pin his crowd or his fans just like against each other. It's cool to like, sometimes when you call out differences, it causes tension. Sometimes when you call out differences, it brings people together. So I think when
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it kind of depends on knowing your crowd, as well as kind of, what do you want to do with that, right? So if he's going to decide to call it out and create that tension, he kind of has to take the responsibility a little bit of what could occur from that. Not to say that he takes full responsibility for people's actions, because at the end of the day, people are responsible for their own actions. But I think him calling it out, I think he would play a little bit of a role of if something does happen. And I think that's part of possibly why he was making that statement. Granted, he didn't necessarily have to make the statement at all. He kind of could have just kept it pushing. But I think him making it in the first place gives him that thought of, well, there's something there. But I think it's up to every artist at the end of the day how they want to address that in the first place, I think.
Great. I may not have contextualized that statement like in the way in which he said it. It was so nonchalant and he didn't care. And one of the things like that we do on this show is we often discuss how our perceptions mold our reality and how everybody has their own perceptions. And despite that, there's underlying truth. But what we have to do as people is broaden our perception in order to understand different people. That's why I was talking about building bridges a little bit earlier. And the difference between No Name and Lil Wayne in this instance is that she sees it. It's her reality. It's her perception of a situation. Whereas he simply did not care to like have that as a part of his worldview, his reality. And I find that to be so interesting because how can you coexist in the same time period in the same world and then drastically see two things from a different, like racism does not exist and then racism exists different. And then when you get into the whole intersectional sociology of like oppression and things of that nature, then it starts to get like way in the weeds of like, this is wrong for that reason, this person is right for that reason. And I just love criticizing those ideas, not even in a harsh way, just to flesh it out and see, kind of get everybody's perception. And that way, when we flesh it out, that way it's like people can think, and this is why it's called the What Do You Know show. It's for our audience to think, well, what do I know about that? Because I love Lil Wayne and I love No Name, and he's like came before her and was like one of the greatest of all time in his era. And now she's coming up, probably one of the, I wouldn't say she's nowhere near like the biggest of the female rappers, but she has her own lane, definitely. And yeah, because I remember the first time I had actually heard her music, I'm a huge fan of Lil B. And when he did that mixtape with Chance the Rapper, it was just like a quick six-song freestyle mixtape, and she was on there. She was like, I don't know how y'all do this.
Yeah, I think it's funny because like I said, like she was a spoken word artist. And actually, so her name was No Name Gypsy back then. Now it's just No Name, but like,
I thought, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know she like officially changed that.
Yeah, she changed it. And okay. Like I think she even said, yeah, I'm gonna stop rapping because she's a spoken word artist. Like she's a storyteller, but I don't know if she actually stopped. I know she went on tour after she said that. I saw her on tour after she said that. So I'm pretty sure
away.
Yeah. So, but no, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that goes with like perception. Like if you look at slam and stuff like that, that's people. A lot of people are emotional. Like if it's not emotional or it's not moving, it's not really slam, or it's not performative. Slam is sometimes performative. When I talked about those different levels, like he obviously had a larger fan base. All of her shows are small. You know.
Yeah, I feel like perception really is everything. Like if you think about comedy, like one person's view on what's funny is very different than another. Like Black comedians, I always find hilarious. I think they're always, but because one of the biggest things that I found about comedians is the most funny comedians are the ones that are telling the truth, regardless of whether we want to accept that truth or not. And so I found, my perception of white comedians, not to say that they're bad. There are several white comedians that I think are hilarious, but I don't always get some of the jokes that they're telling or some of the things that they're telling. And so my perception is different, right? Because I'm a Black female. So my focus and the things that I experience are going to be very different than a white female. And so I think comedy is definitely a good lighthearted version of where your perception goes, because everyone's is different. And a comedian could have a great show one night and a terrible show the next night. And it's because they were in different cities. So yeah.
People's truth is like, my truth is not your truth. It's not your truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I gotta disagree with that one. That's why I said perception.
Yeah.
Because truth it underlies everything. We can't actually have access to the truth. How I look at things is, because I'm also a Christian, I believe that God is truth, but us as humans, we don't actively seek to understand. We seek the box. We want to just put ourselves in a box. We like the echo chamber. That's why social media is so popular now, because we can just follow who we want to follow. We can watch Fox News, we can watch MSNBC, and we can constantly get trapped in that confirmation bias and constantly be proven right in our own heads. And then when someone says something you don't agree with, they're labeled to be like wrong, instead of trying to build a bridge or trying to seek a little bit more of a different understanding. So I personally, I just almost like, when people say my truth, your truth, I'm like, okay. Because like I said, I love to talk about how words are used. Yeah. And I don't think we can flippantly use the word truth. But if we, in my opinion, accurately use the word perception, then it starts to make people understand like, okay, well, maybe there is only a truth, but I'm just not seeing it because I'm not open to other things.
No,
I mean, you can criticize me on that if you want.
No, I agree. So like when you said like using the word flippantly, so like when I say my truth, I definitely meant my perception is like, you know, my perception is, my experience is, and I definitely like, you know, that's what I meant when I said truth. But I understand like, you know, you can use, or I guess we conflate things a lot. But I find that a little interesting, because when you talk about getting into culture and getting into the weeds of things, how you say things does differ. So there's bridging the gap there, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that's like it's not touchy, but it is a weedy thing. So some people wouldn't be able to say, oh, I meant my experience, I meant my perception. They just know it at like the word for that in their community. Right, exactly. Like my understanding of that is the way that exactly the way that I said it. So, but that's what I said. It's definitely about bridging the gap, or like asking more. So, you could be like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, oh, do you actually mean this? Like when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, like that is actually what I meant. But you know, off top, I was like, no, I meant what I said. Like I said what I said. Like, what are you talking about? So,
well,
like,
you know how, and this, I don't like when people are like, oh, I hate getting stuck in traffic. Oh, I hate when this happens. I hate people always using the word hate. Yeah. I find that to be like something subtly wrong with the person's like ego, because if you're constantly saying how much you hate something that's just like a minor inconvenience, despite the fact that you may not actually mean hatred, right? Like the evil that is associated with a hatred, we're like conditioned to use it just because of the people that we're around, and just how like we liken it to a colloquialism, but at the same time, just when I just sit and reflect and meditate and things, I just like think, well, why did I say what I said instead of saying what I wanted to mean? You know, what did I want? Because I think that language is a very powerful medium, like one of the most powerful things we have, especially as you were saying in music and things of that nature. We take the ideas in our soul and then bring them out into the physical world. And if we aren't saying what we want to say, I always question, what do I know about what I'm trying to say? You know, like,
very interesting point. I don't know. I've sat through this enough times to actually like have it take root somewhere else. And just to Ola's point, like just thinking about, you can only really regurgitate things the way you understand them, right? And so if hate is a minor inconvenience, and for me, and it's not some spirited like heavy evil thing, then I could say hate, and I could never ever associate it to what you associate it to. So even saying hate is like, well, hate is this other thing for me, but it's like, but it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
No, I get you. I get exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So it's just like, part of it is bridging the gap, but part of it is also like, sometimes the point is moot to really like get into those kind of weeds.
I suppose there's some, but on the only, that's why I'm trying to do this is like, is I have been bringing a unique conversation to the table about like, because like when I said flippantly, I just meant that we use words without giving them the proper weight. Because I think that, like I said, it's a spiritual, we're conveying a spiritual idea, and that's it. I mean, I'm not trying. That's why I love this stuff though. Like I love having conversations like these.
Because I think one of the things though is, it is your perception, but I think when people talk about my truth, your truth, our truth, I think it's what's true for them, right?
Right, so, it's a reality.
Right, it's their reality, and that is like the fact of what is happening for them, right? So I feel like, I don't know that truth is necessarily not the right word to use. I feel like it's okay for people to say like, that's my truth, because I feel like what your perception of what's happening, regardless of if that's somebody else's, that is what's happening for you, right? And so it's true that this is what I'm seeing. This is what's happening for me. And somebody else's perception, that is true for them. That is what they're seeing. And so I feel like I understand what you're saying in terms of it being used so much in our culture. And I think it is used a lot. But I think the basis of where people are coming from with what's my truth and what's your truth comes and stems from the fact that that is what's actually happening. Like, that's what's occurring. For me, my truth is that I'm a Black female in the US, and there are certain places I cannot go for my own safety. That is my truth. Somebody else who is not a Black female in the US, their truth is that they can go there, and that like they can go to that place and not feel as if they're unsafe, if that makes sense.
It depends on the place. So there's some places.
There are some places nobody wants to go. And so that's our truth, and that's kind of like what we all share. But I definitely see where you're coming from with I think one thing that we probably should do more of is understanding that perception, just in general of, you know, this is my perception of what's going on, but it's true for me. And I think we need to embrace that part of it a little bit more.
Let me just ask you a question though. You said you can have one person say that's their truth and the other person say that's their truth. Well, what if they're in a disagreement? Then they're always going to eternally label each other as wrong. You're never going to see eye to eye to someone that believes they're true and what you see is true. There's just two different perceptions going on. How can you have a constructive dialogue with someone that automatically assumes that you're wrong because it's their truth?
So that is where I would say we should, as a society, do more of agreeing to disagree, and allowing for that conversation, right? So if you see something and you're like, nope, I disagree with that. I don't think that's right. I don't think you should do that. And I'm over here like, I want to do that. I think I would still allow you to I would agree to disagree, right? I would agree to say, you know what, we're not on the same page on that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. So I feel like we've all had instances with our parents, right? Where our parents are like, no, you shouldn't do this. And for you, that is the right move because you know what's for you. And for your parents, they're like, no, I don't think that you should do that.
But then again, sometimes your parents are right.
Sometimes they are right. Sometimes they are right, but sometimes they're not.
Look at this picture. Are their shoes white and blue, or are they, what is it, like pink and gold?
The dress thing. Which for some people, their vision, that is what they're seeing, right? And for other people, that is what they're seeing. And they're physically, they can't see anything else. And so the agreement to have the discussion, I think, is where we can kind of bridge that gap a little bit, is allowing the opportunity to have the discussion. What we run into is people who are butting heads and they don't agree with what's going on and they refuse to have the conversation. Like they refuse to even discuss it or talk about, well, me and Ola, we have moments where I'm like, I disagree with what you're saying. But we'll still have the conversation. We may leave the conversation and say, I still disagree with what she's saying, but I at least now have more information about her perspective.
Yeah, so I want to bring this back real quick because you talked about language and I studied a little bit of it in school. And I was thinking about this thing and I was like, yo, let me look it up real quick because it definitely has to do with what we're talking about. So I read, it's like the Death of Socrates. And I think
like Credo?
Credo and Phaedo and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Socrates was like a dialectic thinker.
He's cool.
And yeah. So I just want to read the
he's kind of gas, but go ahead.
Absolutely. Like we had this whole discourse, but I just want to read like the definition of the dialectical method because it's exactly like kind of what we're talking about. And it's like the dialectic or dialectical method is at base a discourse between two or more people holding different points of view about a subject but wishing to establish the truth through reasoned arguments. And I think that's interesting because when you brought up like, no, like there is a truth, the thing about the dialectic or dialectical method is like you're continuing to question. Like you ask a question, you hear them, you listen, and you ask more questions really to get to the root of like what they meant and stuff like that. So I think that absolutely has to do with language and how we like talk and meet and bridge the gap with each other. And the first time I was introduced to this type of topic, I read this book, and all it said was just like, hey, if you're trying to connect with people, really listen to them, really ask them questions about what they're actually saying, and say, like, there's a lot that we want to know. Oh, you know, where do you work? You know, where are you from? Da da da. But like, listen to what they're saying, and then instead of asking the other question that you want to ask a question that has to do with what they're actually saying. And that's exactly what this method is. It's like, okay. So, and at the end of it, like, you'll get to a truth, or you'll get to their truth, or the truth. So I think it's just interesting. Like, that's the first, like, it came to my mind. I was like, I don't even know, like, what the word is. I got to look it up. So I had to, like, look the book up.
I
then,
thought
like,
you were texting
know,
someone. I'm not gonna lie. I was like,
but hold on. He said that you're trying to have a logical argument to reach the truth, not about the other side's truth.
But I feel like part of the truth is the dialogue.
I mean,
like, I feel like part of the truth is that, like, is that back and forth between yourself and another person of the disagreement itself, I think, is part of the truth. I think we forget that sometimes, right? Like, the actual answer, you know how, like, in math, your teacher's like, show your work or your answer is incorrect. I feel like the part of us showing our work before we actually get to the answer falls under the truth itself, because how do you know that it's true if you haven't taken the time to really look into it, and you haven't taken the time to actually have somebody challenge your beliefs? And I've had people ask me, like, if you were to get into a room with Trump, what would you do? I'm like, first of all, why would I be in the room with Trump? But if that were to happen, I'd be asking questions. I would not, because I feel like a lot of people would be like, oh, I'm upset, and I want to, like, I'm mad at you for these things, and I'd be more on the perspective of, okay, emotional, why are your views this way? Where did you start in your life to get you to this point? Not to judge you, but how did you get to this point in your life? Because how I got to where I'm at is drastically different.
Oh, and so it would be mad interesting.
It would be I feel like it'd be an extremely interesting conversation if he would allow the conversation to occur. I feel like it'd be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah. And you said something really interesting. You said the truth is somewhere in that disagreement. And you just sparked a thought in me. I think that the truth is the essence of that disagreement, because, like I said, if you have a different perception here, a different perception there, they don't see eye to eye. The truth is what's the underlying factor, and it's that the disagreement is the essence of truth. That is so bad interesting.
So we're all young professionals here at the table. So I'm very interested, and maybe it's not a super interesting topic, but I'm very interested in what kind of hobbies you guys find yourselves involved in around the city, or even outside of the city, because I know everybody's got a little money. You guys probably travel on the weekends. What are you doing to, get that work-life balance?
Okay, I guess it's me. Okay, so I have my cat. I love my son. That's my son. All right, put some respect on his name.
God bless.
But I mean, y'all know I'm into a lot of different things. So, like,
supposedly.
Actually, no. But I like reading. I like learning and stuff. So, like, kind of the whole conversation that we had and stuff. I'm gonna bring it back, but I'm gonna circle back around. It's like, you like the wordsmithing and all that kind of stuff, and just talking about that kind of stuff. I think it's important, because then you learn how to have conversations. You learn what kind of questions you need to ask, and then also about that underlying thing. Sometimes you actually cannot get to that underlying thing because you don't know what questions to ask. You don't know, like, you don't even know why you stand on what you stand on. So, and there's schools of thought and stuff like that you can learn. So I'm very interested in that. Recently, I've gotten into, like, socioeconomic schools of thought. So we live in a Western society, but as we think about innovation and professionalism, technology, all this stuff, where we're moving to in the future, there are other schools of thoughts where countries are excelling far faster and far better than the U.S. is because of these schools of thought. So I'm interested in that as of late. Obviously, music, try to make music sometimes, been on the EDM tip. So and then y'all know I love tiny houses, so like looking into that, construction. Actually not recently, but like this week I was like, okay, I'm gonna read up on the Indiana zoning ordinances and stuff. Yeah, so like
I was like, what is she doing?
Been reading up on that, but that's because, like, now I'm, instead of just like, oh, this is what I want to do, drawing up sketches and stuff, I'm like really trying to be actionable about it. So yeah. I had my first rugby practice. Oh, excuse me. My first rugby practice yesterday too.
What team?
Indy Hoydens.
Indy Hoydens?
Yeah. So hoyden, it's a loud and rambunctious woman, apparently, is what a hoyden
I don't know how I feel about that.
Oh,
And
that's.
I really don't know.
yeah, it's like I think it's a real definition, but anyway.
Is that an English word? Hoyden?
It could be like Scandinavian. I don't know. But it is. But it was like on I looked at it. It was like on that little thing. But rugby is like that though. It's like it's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. It's like you really collide on the pitch and then you collide in the bars afterwards.
Have they
it's a
been
good
doing
time.
any research on CTE for rugby? Because I know they've done CTE for football. But have they done it for rugby at all? Because I feel like
really
there might be.
Can you just, what is CTE?
So it's a really, really long word, but it's basically when football players, when they get hit enough times, they get a lot of concussions, right? And so in a concussion, your brain has like your brain inside of your skull and then the actual like
Really?
jelly or yeah, hopefully like the jelly or whatever. But basically what happens is when you get a concussion, say you had a jar of pickles, right? Your brain just kind of just does that, which is really bad for you. Did I miss the?
No. It was just the jar of pickles.
Oh yeah. So I mean, but that's literally what happens to your brain when you get hit that hard. And so it's been a big thing. Have you seen the movie Concussion?
Yeah.
So that's what that movie was about, was trying to understand how is that affecting people's brains that play football. But the fact that you can't tell if a person has CTE until you do an autopsy is the biggest issue. And so they've developed all kinds of technology to create actual indicators in your helmet.
Did you do research on this?
I did do research on it,
I thought so.
So they like created indicators that will let coaches on the sidelines know, hey, this person got hit really hard. You need to go and do a scan of them immediately. Rugby, you don't wear helmets. And so that's what led to me asking. I know that's a little off topic from the hobbies, but...
Yeah, so you also have less to bang against, so you're not like banging against your helmet and things like that. A lot of people think that rugby is a dangerous sport, but I'm pretty sure, like, you can double check, you can fact check me, but like there are way less like brain injuries in rugby than there is in contact sports.
Plus, I was listening to some rugby players talk about that, and they were saying that due to all the padding and the helmet, it actually encourages players in America to hit way harder.
Okay. I mean, I'd agree.
Yeah, you can really hurt somebody really hard, especially on the defensive tackles.
The person who had the first case of CTE was shocking himself with a taser because he couldn't feel anything. Like, that's what he was doing. The movie Concussion was quite phenomenal.
Anyway.
But that kind of goes into one of my hobbies, right? I love watching movies. I love understanding the facts about movies, like the little itty bitty things. Like, did you guys know, and this is not a movie, but for Scandal, the president in Scandal, his family, his last name is Goldwyn. His family is the co-owner for Metro Goldwyn Mayer, which is MGM Studios.
Interesting.
Which I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But doing that, like little research during movies or finding little facts. We did like Strengths Finder at work. And my biggest strength was basically the person that collects random facts of information. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I love just having that knowledge. But then that leads into my other hobby, which is people. And I say that in general because I love learning about people, learning about, how people are motivated, kind of how their brains work, but also like their behavior. So I love Criminal Minds. It's amazing. But also like people development. So I work with, it's not work, it's volunteering, but with BDPA, which is Black Data Processing Associates. And so we teach kids code on the weekends and working with them to kind of help with their professional development. I love talking to people about professional development and how you can improve your resume, and not even just your resume, but how to have a conversation with another professional. Because I think that's something that gets lost in the school system. One, we aren't taught how to do our taxes or change a tire or how to have a conversation with a person in an interview. And I think those are the things that we really, first of all, doing your taxes, you don't want the IRS coming after you. But definitely, how to have a conversation in a career fair, how to dress at those things, because it's not something that you always, is there something missing? Is there something that I didn't get? Y'all reacted to each other as if like.
No, you just spurred a memory.
Something else.
Oh, okay.
The
career fair thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I love people. I'll sit and talk to legitimately almost anyone. because I want to learn more about where people's perspectives come from, because we were talking about people's truths and their perspectives and where they came from and how they got there. And I'm genuinely intrigued. Like, there's no catch. There's not like I'm collecting this data for some. It's solely because I'm intrigued just by people in general. So those are my hobbies. I also like Hans Zimmer. I legitimately love music scores. I know the music score for The Lion King, and it's bad. Like, I could tell you what's happening in the movie just by listening to like, there's a skull that's gonna pass by via water at this moment.
Oh, wow.
I actually have that in a physical copy. I found that at like a like one of those old used like places.
Yeah.
I was like, the Lion King soundtrack, $4.
Gotta buy it. Hans Zimmer is amazing.
And Elton John. I was like, wait, what?
So great.
Fun fact, my high school my last high school halftime show was in band was The Lion King, and yeah.
Which song?
A collection. It was like a medley. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
I think like most halftime shows are medleys.
I was just wondering if there was a specific one that you recalled.
Don't quite recall.
I could probably
I can
tell
play
you
it for you, but yeah, no,
It's very soothing. I really like. We were talking about this earlier about listening to just Hans Zimmer or musical scores like from movies while doing work. I feel so empowered. Like when listening to the Batman theme, you know, the score, because he did Batman and The Lion King, and I was just like, wow, I can do anything. This is amazing. And then I looked and I was like, wow,
one of my favorite, I guess, contemporary, like modern composers, his name is Ludovico Einaudi. Shameless plug, give it a listen. He just came out with 7 Days Walking. I can spell it. I don't think it really matters, but like I can spell his first name. I can't spell his last name. Ludovico. Ludovico.
All right.
All right,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Thank you. I'm not gonna remember that. I'll text you that later.
Okay,
But yeah. I also love comedy shows now.
Really?
I went to a free comedy show at Black Circle Brewing Company. If anybody wants to go, shameless plug.
Where's
They're
that
free on Sundays.
That's
at 8.
Keystone, right?
It's in Broderpool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I know
up
what
in
you're
that
talking
area. But they do, a girl I went to college with, she puts on these free Sunday shows at 8:00 on Sundays. Sunday shows on Sundays at 8:00.
Okay.
If anyone was wondering.
I mean, that is a school night, but I mean,
It is a school night, but you're done at 10 and we aren't having to go into the office right now.
Right.
So.
So I'm down.
Yeah, I'm trying to do some more
We can do
trips,
like
too.
sushi comedy.
Yeah, we could. There's a couple of good sushi places. Rachel's over there nodding her head. She loves.
What about you, Rachel? What kind of things are you into?
We have a live guest for this show, actually,
A live audience guy.
This is the Rachel that he called me earlier.
which we didn't get in the show.
It's quite all right. What are your hobbies, Rachel? Good old
Sports,
Chet.
a good jock.
man.
We got a good jock here.
This girl, whenever because we have volleyball games, which we haven't won a set yet. Still haven't won a set, and we've played like 6 games. It's
let
fine.
alone a game.
But this girl played softball in college and basketball, which she was in a book for, which she always makes sure that I tell people. So whenever she serves in volleyball, it goes first of all, she backs up super far so that she can serve as far back as she can go, and then serves it, and it still goes all the way out.
Like 8 feet.
Like, well, wow. You did. Last
12
game, you had
aces.
good. She had a good amount. She's
Puppies
good.
and kittens is always what I yell at her, so she doesn't hit it too hard. I
Yeah.
want her to think of puppies and kittens when she's hitting that ball.
Imagine being on the receiving end of that. It hurts.
Wow.
But yeah, hobbies. Aaron, what are your hobbies?
Yeah.
My hobbies, I'm a huge gamer, which isn't actually true anymore because I only play like 2 games. I'm kind of lame now.
What games though?
I don't know how to
Rocket
play the
League,
games.
and I only play that one because it just satisfies my need to use physics. Like you can like rotate the car in the air and do really cool stuff. And also like it feels like you're moving fast even though you're not moving at all. So like that's super satisfying. Anyway,
That sounds
Virtual reality.
I'll move, but like it's satisfying, and I'll play like all the Hans Zimmer music, and some music is also another one of my hobbies. I used to produce, but now I just get by on like listening to songs. Really big into hip hop, really big into orchestral, like video gamey sounds, which used to be 8-bit, but like nowadays, like video game music is like equivalent to like a big cinema score. I think I sent Lauren
that was
this
crazy.
guy, or I don't know if it's a person or a group, but the name is Theophany, and he arranged basically a remix of music inspired by
You said The Legend of Zelda?
Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
Oh, send that to me. Why didn't you send that to me first?
I listened to it. I meant to ask you.
That's like one of my favorite games.
It's a huge 2 albums, but anyway, it's amazing. It makes me feel like there should be a movie for it, and it really obsessed me when I listened to it.
He was very excited about it. I was in the middle of the workday, and he was like, "You have to listen to this. This is amazing." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, playing games, listening to music. I go out when I can. I'm kind of like a ditto. Like I could do anything. Like if people were to like, hey, we're going to this country rock show, I could be like, yeah, we'll go. And I might complain about it the whole time, but I'd always get something positive. I'd always take something good out of it.
Griff be complaining for no reason.
I complain about anything.
I know. It is just like Griff.
I'm just very attentive. That's all it is. I can just pull things out.
Yeah,
like,
you know Griff is having a good time when he's complaining about it.
Pretty much.
You know he's present.
Exactly.
Right, he's there. He's
Yeah.
noticing
I'm
everything.
not paying attention, and that's
Yeah.
way
Then you're
worse.
bored. Yeah. And then you're just like,
It's like whatever.
Yeah.
And if I'm bored, I'm gone. I'm going back home and play games
Exactly.
and listen to music.
Not I'm going back home. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home.
I hate it here.
What?
I want to go home.
Also, really into baking. Like
Oh, we need those pancakes.
really into baking. I mean, pancakes aren't really baking,
they're not. That's not baking.
but I mean, I recently
You-
made my first loaf of bread.
Oh, dope. Oh, yeah. Let me.
Straight
Let
from
me
the
get a
dough?
slice.
It wasn't great, but it was
sorry.
really good. Is that 15?
Yeah.
I'm gonna finish anyway.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I didn't know.
I got an original whiskey muffin recipe. It does
They were
slap,
good. They
and
were
it,
actually
it
really
will
good.
put you on your back. I promise. If you had to,
I was not on my back, but it was good.
I didn't
He's like, I'm not going to hype it that much, but
I turned it down because I knew I'd be giving it to people. So I mean, but we had some in college and like
No, he made them during finals time, which was so great for everybody. It was a perfect time. It's like, dude, I need a whiskey muffin, man.
the real team
so
player
funny.
there.
Yep.
When morale's low.
yeah, I really am a homebody. I don't know. I guess I mastered being in the house and being content in the house.
How are you liking working from
Simple
home right
man.
now?
I hate it.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing ever. I'm ready to get my steps in again.
I'm pretty weird. Like, I am a homebody too. I really just like to study history and read. And I think when I read like novels, which is fiction novels, it does like me a lot of, well, it really expands my imagination because it can take you to a different time and a place and really make you experience something that's totally unreal. And it's inspired me to like start writing my own books, kind of like how the music that you love, you kind of want to do it more and more. Despite the fact I have no like training in it, I've trained myself because I've read so much, you know. And I used to be really big into video games too, but then I grew up and I'm like, I don't have time for video games anymore. So what I really focus on doing in my free time is just strategizing on how to make the most out of my time with small business ventures and enriching my mind through history. And those are my hobbies. So back to talking about toilet paper and everything.
I mean, what's your favorite? Okay, so when you talk about history, because I'm a history buff too.
Okay.
I love American, like U.S. history, even though it hasn't been super great for Black people. But I love U.S. history just because it's in chronological order. World history stresses me out. It's all over the place.
Oh, that's so good though.
So what is your preferred? Like, if you were to go to like a specific history era, what
You
would
had to be an FBI
Like travel or-
analyst. No, if you had to be an FBI analyst in that particular area, region was your focus, because that's how they do it. What would it be?
Okay, so you're saying like FBI in terms of being in charge of the intelligence of a country,
Yeah.
and then look into it despite the time span, right?
Yeah.
I would probably be in the warring states in China's history, I'd be part of the Qin dynasty because they're the one that unified China. So I would really love to know, because there was bigger like the Shu dynasty, or there were different nation states in all of China, and the Chu were like the super huge. They were almost bigger than the three ones that bordered them. They were the most southernmost nation state, and they were the last to be conquered in China by the Qin dynasty. And I would have loved to know how like elaborate that was, because they did that because they had been fighting in a nation like for 1,000 years, and then finally it all came into fruition that one emperor was able to unify all of China. How did that happen? You know, that's.
I just find history, because I've said it multiple times, I like to collect random facts. Like in 5th grade, my history teacher told me, and we will have to fact check this, but I've tried, is that the same person's land that the American Revolution started on is the same land that it ended on. He had moved, and it ended on his land. So it started on his land, and it ended on his land.
Interesting.
We would have to fact check that to make sure, but I'm pretty sure it's true.
So I don't know. I'm not a history buff, but I guess I've had to study abundance of it for like intelligence, and you have to understand, you know, culture and history and stuff. But like we talk about like that empires and dynasties in general are like, wow, because we have all these like little countries and stuff like that. But at one point, I mean, we had like 4 or something like it was really regional. Like then we split up into all these little countries and stuff like that. So like the Persian Empire, Romans, the Greeks, Mongols, all that kind of stuff is just like it's cool. And then there's always movies about it that make it seem
right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? That make it seem like amazing. And then, you know, I don't know about y'all, but like I had like world history courses at every level, and they always start with the great empires, I think is what they call it, or something like that. So it's interesting. It's cool.
I love that you brought up like Greek, because I've always found Greek mythology so interesting. Hercules is one of my favorite movies. I'm talking about the cartoon, not the live action one.
You said Greek, right?
Yeah, like
that'd be Heracles.
Who?
Hercules is Roman.
What?
Yeah.
The Romans took everything from the Greeks. You know that, right?
You see that? I don't know anything, but I do like overall Greek mythology in general.
I hear you.
Has always been super interesting to me, because it's like, who are all of these people? And you're telling me that all of these people have had relations with all of these other people, and they have all of these kids, and some of these kids are gods, and some of these kids aren't gods, and how does this work out?
Has anybody seen or read, please, American Gods? It is so good. So I think it's like Stars or something like that. But it's basically about the old gods, so like Norse and Greek and like religion and stuff like that.
Egyptian.
Yeah. So all the old gods versus the new gods, media, television, technology. And it's funny because they talk about like Easter, right? So Easter's throwing a party, right? It's like 3 different Jesuses, like just Santa Claus, like everybody's there. But they talk about like they just kind of talk about like, I've had to survive over the years, and so Easter's talking about that. So she was actually like the Norse goddess of spring or something like that. But when the dawn of Christianity came, she had to change and morph so that she could stay alive. So she became Easter. And like so it's like cool, and it's like a battle of like the old gods trying to like stay relevant.
And that's super interesting. I'm gonna look into that show now, but
it's a book. So if you like reading, so it's I think it's like a series. So so it's a show too. But I think I'm not a reader, so I saw the show first, and then was like, oh, I should probably pick up the book. But if you like books and stuff and novels,
yeah, absolutely,
I think you should pick up the books first.
Cool. We only have like 5 more minutes left in this, so I can't get into it. Okay. But what they're talking about is Ishtar. You said it was a she, right? Yeah. They're talking about Ishtar, and so I'll get into that one day. We'll have a whole 2-hour thing about that, because it's really interesting what you're talking about. But yeah, so to wrap it up, let's keep it on a fun note. What are some things that you're looking to do? Like, because I know 2020 is starting off kind of crazy. Are there any goals and aspirations that we're trying to hit if we don't go into total quarantine for like 2 months?
I was supposed to go to Mexico in 2 weeks, but it looks like Mexico is closing their borders.
Yeah. I'm going to Mexico.
So I'm not going to Mexico probably.
Nope.
Travel, but we'll see how that goes, considering the coronavirus. That was like my biggest thing for this year, was trying to travel a lot and considering all of the health concerns.
Yeah,
so I gotta reevaluate my goals for
basically
2020.
those planes are giant incubation chambers, because if one person has it, their vents don't get cleaned.
Yeah.
So just incubate it for.
But always personal growth and getting stronger in my faith has kind of been like one of my. I started the 2020 trying to read the whole Bible. Not working out right now, but we'll get there.
I would suggest silent prayer. Like, The scriptures is one way to get into the faith, but it's not the way. A lot of people believe it's the way. Yeah.
There are multiple. I think that's some. And I know we got like 5 minutes, but
exactly.
multiple ways to get. We could have a whole conversation about it. But I have always had a strong faith. I'm just trying to get stronger in it. But that's kind of one of my goals for the year.
Ola?
So real quick, I wanted to read a lot of books. I wanted to build a couple things. I wanted to run a few races, make a couple songs.
She do have a book.
And then, I do journal. And just I have a lot of goals, but try new things. So I think I wanted to make a zine. I wanted to do like yoga. I wanted to do skating while I was up here. I'm really big about getting into the community and finding my community. So like finding hot yoga. Sure. So like finding the open mics, or not even the open mics, but just like what are the communities doing?
Like the scene.
Not even the scene, but like, how is this community building? How are they, selling properties and things like that? How are they, what is their strategy, and just learning about that. What about you?
I know she have more.
No, she literally has a book like this thick of things that she wants to do for the
all in a year.
Okay. So it's like you have your bigger goals, but then you can make smaller, more tangible stuff to get to them.
Sure. No, I hear you on that for sure. That's the way you do it. You know, absolutely. Griff.
My major one goal for the year is to be more present in every individual moment of my life.
Aww.
So pure.
So tender.
Have you read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle?
Not.
It's about being present. So
I'll check it out.
Sure. Griff don't read.
I do read.
Okay.
You can listen to it.
Yeah, ebook.
I got books now.
I have books now. Okay, sorry. What are your other goals?
Yeah, think about that.
I support you.
We'll consider that later.
Let that simmer for a minute.
That just encompasses everything that I'm doing. So if it's baking, if it's spending time with family, if it's doing this podcast, if it's just holding myself accountable for my work, just being more present in that moment and making sure that I follow through.
Oh,
cool.
Yeah, I think for me, I like to keep my goals pretty realistic and attainable. I think that's the number one thing, and you want to overshoot them, but you don't want to make something that you can't do. So definitely looking forward to the spring and the fall lines for 2020 for and Co. Those are going to be really dope. We just keep getting better and better with the printmaking and the styles and the elaborateness of the designs and even the quality of the apparel. So really looking forward to just continuing to go at that, grow with the business. My rough copy of my novel is going to be done in June, and then self-publish at least 50 copies by the end of the year, and sell them. That would be really great. And then just basically on all the different platforms, Griff, get us to around 200 or 300 subscribers. That'd be a nice tangible goal, and I think we could really overshoot that. So, and then other than that, I mean, personal things just continuing to learn and grow.
Oh.
Yeah.
What is your book? What genre?
Genre, it'll be nonfiction, but I won't say what specific.
Oh yeah, no. I was more. Yeah. Is it fiction, nonfiction?
It's nonfiction. Yep. Or excuse me, it's fiction.
I was say,
I'm tripping. I'm tripping. No. I'm tripping. No, it's fiction. I'm tripping.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, just really excited to just keep growing and keep going.
So, is there a way for our viewers to connect with you guys? So you guys are comfortable with that at all? Yeah.
I'm Ola Hoops on you. OLA Hoops, like basketball hoops on you. No caps, spaces, nothing special. Just Ola Hoops on you. Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. I only really use Instagram and Snapchat, so that's me.
I gotta check mine. I change it all the time. Hold on.
Nice.
So my Instagram is Lauren LAUREN _ Ravenel RAVENELL. And my Snapchat, hold on, gotta check that too, is the same first and last name, but without the underscore between Lauren and Ravenel. So feel free to add me. But if you add me, can you send me like a message too to tell me who you are?
Yeah, be like, hey, I heard you on. What do you know?
Not to be rude or anything, but just trying to get a vibe for who's adding me into my social accounts.
That's real. That's real.
I hear you. I don't care who you are, just support us. No, just
support 100%.
Oh yeah, support these dudes. Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
Griff,
what?
Are we signing out? Okay, well, this has been the What Do You Know Show. The camera cut out.